Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us at the opening of the RIVELAZIONI International Conference. I open this section, which includes two opening lectures, and at the end of both the lectures we will have a Q&A moment with the final collective moment with the two speakers and anyone who wants to participate. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank all my colleagues from the Scientific Secretariat for the hour teamwork and the dedication, and a special thanks also goes to the to our scientific coordinators, Professors Mariella Sant'Angelo and Paola Scala, who made this conference possible. So let's begin this first part of the RIVELAZIONI conference with the lecture by the architect Davide Piscitelli, a member of Forensic Architecture Group. And first of all, welcome Davide, welcome to Naples, and thank you for accepting our invitation with much enthusiasm. It's a really pleasure and an honor for us to host forensic architecture here at the Department of Architecture in Naples, and to open with you the RIVELAZIONI conference, which has been conceived as a space for reflection on methods and tools for researching the invisible and the denied and neglected places of the contemporaneity. So we have invited forensic architecture because their work fit in specific way with the topic of the conference. They also represent a paradigmatic case of how design disciplines can question and operate in the invisible and denied spaces of the contemporary urban condition. In fact, the work of the forensic architectures, like the mission of this conference, take part on debate about the spatial justice based on the non-neutrality of the space and the need to highlight the ethical responsibility of the architecture. In this regard, your work, their work, is paradigmatic in two ways. In terms of identifying the object of the study and the research, invisible, denied, places in which we can recognize conditions also of injustice, which are present in the conference session, but also in our researches, experiments and didactical missions, and the demonstrating the necessity to develop the new methods and tools for the architectural research in order to reveal the invisible and the denied. The invisibility is understood in its complex spatial and political construction, and as scholars and architects, we are interested in investigating how design disciplines can or should develop tools that give voice to what is excluded from the narratives that highlight issues of spatial injustice and the interconnection with social, economical, political injustice, and so on. Within these many forms of invisibility, we find those connected to space of conflict, to space of marginality, exclusion, and institutional silence that are spatial translation of phenomena apparently distant from the design discipline, but which instead focus on the construction of the space. And in this sense, the practice of forensic architectures propose an extension of the disciplinary field and the possibility of landing in the contemporary condition. Forensic Architectures is a research agency based at Goldsmiths, University of London. Their mandate is to develop, apply and disseminate new techniques, methods and concepts for investigating states and corporate violence. Their team includes architects, software developer, filmmaker, and a lot of figures. They operate across human rights, journalism, architecture, art and aesthetic, academia and law. And the term forensic refers to the production and the presentation of spatial evidence within a legal, political and cultural context, and take architecture to include from the building to the city, all the process of the construction of the space. Their work is admissible in law court, and this aspect shows us how spatial issues and investigation that focus on our disciplines are an important key to understand the dynamics of the world, especially those involving in conflict. In fact, forensic architecture produces innovative method and tool for knowledge based on the political responsibility of the architecture, which is central especially in the contemporary condition. In our work, we often take form to new space, but it's also essential to understand how the spatial configuration can be read as a document and how its representation can become a form of investigation, useful for ethical and not only aesthetic transformation of the contemporary urban environment. Space, human rights, and spatial justice are some of the key words that will guide us over the next day, and which after this morning will perhaps be clear and more concrete. The case presented to us today by the architect Davide Piscitelli refers to one of the most dramatic events we are currently taking place, and the lecture is entitled Space and Violence, the Architecture of Genocidal Starvation in Gaza. As Davide will explain in a moment, the study reveals the patterns in the Israeli army approach to aid distribution, showing the analysis that demonstrate that technical parameters become instrument of control and all is referred to the space. Their analysis not only denounces a violation of human rights, that is of course important and central, but also demonstrate how architecture can be a central tool for understanding the material dynamics of the contemporary violence. So, thank you, Davide, and welcome again. If you want, you can start.
Can you hear me? Come funziona? Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you so much, Maria, for your introduction. I think you described us better than me. I'm Davide Piscitelli. I'm an advanced researcher of forensic architecture, and over the past 3 years, I co-coordinating the work on Gaza with my colleague Nora Guzai. So the presentation of today, I divided the presentation into 2 blocks. The first part will be about methodology, just to introduce you to some of the methodology that we use of forensic architecture, and the second part will focus on Gaza, especially on the distribution of the aid in the past few months. What you see here, just our website. I will not introduce ourselves again, but if you're curious, you can find all our work online, where we basically show all the work, but also the methodology behind it, and how it's being used in legal cases. What we do for forensic architecture, we investigate human rights violation by using spatial analysis, which is
from the vehicle.
Apology.
Vibrates.
Spatial analysis, which is the process to understand incident in time and space. And this video that I'm showing here is just an example of a reconstruction of the killing of the Palestinian journalist Shibin by the Israeli army. Here we reconstruct the road, and based on images and satellite images, we were able to reconstruct the position of the military and then reconstruct the trajectory of the bullet and show the intentionality of aiming at the head of the journalist instead of being an accident. I will go through some examples very quickly, so bear with me. Let's move a little bit into the methodologies, and you will see in the second part how we have to adapt some of these methodologies to the current situation in Gaza, which is a different type of violence than we experienced before in terms of speed, but also in terms of scale of violence. One of the first techniques that we usually use is geolocation, which means like to try to understand where a video or an image that we receive is from, and to pinpoint on a map in its coordinate. What you see here are 4 frames from a video. This video is from May 2024, and this video showing like a missile, a missile that is falling on tents. These are tents of Palestinians being displaced in the Al-Mawazi area. But how do we tell where this happened? So, based on report, we know that this happened in the Mawazi area, which is a region in Gaza, and then we generally collect or receive footage from Palestinians of the missile, as in the previous case, or the aftermath. I will not show anything graphic. This is a video that shows basically the aftermath of the missile hitting the ground. It's not very clear what we are seeing, but I just want to show you how we do this process in a much simpler way. On the bottom left, you can see there is the crater. Do you see my mouse? Yeah. No. Oh, yes. Nice. You can see the shape of the crater, and then on the back, there's like a tree of bushes, or a line of bushes or trees, and there is also different shelters positioned on the back, and you can see a road in the background. So since we know approximately the area, we were looking through satellite images to identify this exact location, and I tried to simplify this by showing some of these elements where you can see the yellow rectangle, like the line of trees, then the line of shelters. You can see the same road here, and the day after, on the 25th of May, when we were able to collect a satellite image, you can clearly see a crater from a missile. This takes a bit of time, but your eye will train itself to recognize this pattern quite quickly. And this is a way to geolocate a video and to prove where a video happened, or where an incident happened. Photo match and 3D reconstruction is another technique. Photo match is something that we developed. Is basically situating an image inside a 3D model, and then use the image to model the model itself. This happens with the object, but also it can be used to reconstruct a building when we don't have access to plans, or maybe to reconstruct building after being destroyed. In this case, I'm showing the car of the killing of the Hind Rajab, which was a kid of 6 years old that was killed by the Israeli army last year. And basically we reconstructed the damage on the car. And why we do this? Why do we need to reconstruct in a 3D model the car? Basically this allows us to project some of the images on top of the car, and then my colleague Nick was tracing by hand each holes on the car that was left by a bullet. By doing so, the model of the car becomes a mnemonic device which is storing the memory of that moment. So, by tracing each holes, what you see here in orange is all the holes enter and exit on the car. This is from the bullet of the Israeli army, and these are more than 300 bullets. What you see here is another example of photo match, where we are matching the photo of a part of the car that shows the bullet, then we trace the bullet. By doing so, we were able to reconstruct the trajectory of the bullet and understand the distance and where the Israeli army was in the moment that killed the 6-year-old kid with her family. We also did some sound analysis, because the Hind was on a phone call with the paramedics, and through sound analysis we were able to determine the distance of the tank from the car, and so to show basically intentionality. This is the Beirut explosion. I'm trying to show you another example of photo match. Like this is a video that then is basically situated inside the 3D model. And why we do this is because it allows us to move into the space, do different analysis, but also understand the point of view of other people. This is another picture that's been situated inside the model. And when we do this, we basically can put together different material from different angles and reconstruct an incident. In this case, you can tell what was happening in that moment at that time, but you can also tell the position of the viewer by reconstructing the camera view inside the model. Another technique that we use is called situated testimonies, which is basically reconstruct the space through the testimony of a witness, and basically together with the community we make the model and we try to understand what happened. This is the Grenfell Tower fire, which is a tower that got on fire in 2017 in London, where several people died inside the tower because of the facade got burned for a wrong usage of a material in this building. And I wanted just to play 1 minute of this video.
So yeah, I came home and noticed that door 136 was ajar. The workmen had gone, so what happened is the flat had been decanted, so that my previous neighbour had left and they were doing some work to it before the new tenant came. And then when I came home in the evening, so after 5 o'clock or after the workmen had finished, I noticed that the door was ajar. So I took some photographs, didn't I, of the door?
Yeah. So he's got a photograph which is, I think it's attached to his second fixation, which is of the door having been left open.
You know, the world wasn't concerned particularly about fire safety actually. It was more that I was worried that someone would come in and squat the flat over the weekend. So I tried to pull the door closed and I couldn't close the door. And the reason I couldn't close the door is because the Virgo was preventing me from pulling the door to.
So basically here he was reconstructing the moment. He was telling us more about the mechanism of this door that was broken, they complained many times, and the night when there was the fire, basically the reason why the floor 16, which is this floor engulfed with smoke, is because the door couldn't be closed, and smoke entered from the window and it goes to the whole floor, and then people coming from the top thought that they were basically gonna die because they couldn't see anything. This is just a small example. Again, this is all available online. These are very long videos. I would suggest to watch them to get an understanding. This is another example. It's 1 minute, and here she was speaking about the experience of the fire and the sound of the fire and what does it mean to be that close to that fire that day.
I didn't know fire had a voice. But it was the words I would use to describe it. It's an internalized sound, self-replicating, and it was just building within itself. The sound was only here, it stayed here, and it grew here, and it built itself.
What kind of text did you think this fire sound had? Please describe it or compare it to something.
It was a raw, like wind.
Okay.
Can we make that deeper?
Yeah. Well, these are lower frequencies. We want a bit more.
Another technique that we use, and apology I'm going very fast, and try to pack everything in this hour, is a remote sensing, which is basically the analysis of satellite images and to try to determine different type of parameter. In this case is a technique called NDVI, which can tell us basically the health of the vegetation. And what we are seeing here is that when the color is green, the health is very good. When the colors start to get red and pink, is basically, this is where deforestation is happening. And to contextualize this, these are images of the Amazon. This is a project we did in the Amazon in the Yanomami area, which is where the Yanomami people live. And we did this project during the Bolsonaro government, and because of Bolsonaro policies, he incentivized like the illegal gold mining inside the Amazon. But it's very hard to see it because they happen at a smaller scale, but in many different places. So the way that we were like showing the illegal gold mining happening because of the practice of gold mining is very harmful to the environment. We did this study where we show basically the deforestation that were happening along this river. From satellite images, we were also able to identify airplane path, which was the only way basically for this criminal to get on this land and then extract gold from this region. We do use this technique also in Gaza, you will see later, especially to try to understand agriculture and the destruction of agriculture in particular. Simulation is another aspect of our work. This is something I have personally been pushing in the past few years. This is again the Grenfell Tower. This is the simulation of the smoke. We work with a fluid dynamic engineer to understand the pollution produced by that night and where it was going, but also the violence of the smoke itself that was visible through the whole city of London. And we used this technique to simulate different aspects that are invisible or quite hard to grasp. Again, in the security testimony that we saw before, we saw one witness speaking about the door of the fire. This is the simulation of the smoke that basically is entering from these windows, and the door is basically here at this point, and we corroborate the simulation with the witness and the statement of the witness that were living on this floor that you can see here. The timing is 1 a.m. in the night because that's when the fire happened, and basically we were able to corroborate the simulation with what they were saying. This is the same simulation, but just more a visual representation of it, because we also produce video that can go. They also go in different forums, like museum, to raise awareness. So try to speak about a topic. So we have different forums, which could be the legal one, but could be also the artistic one, like a museum or others. I will skip through this just to give you a sense of it. The last example is from Nebeliska, which is an archaeological site in Ukraine, and this is the geophysical maps, which is a magnetic map. Basically, it detects the magnetism inside the soil, and each dot that you see here are a value of magnetic strength of the soil under the ground, and by doing so, you can detect what is under the ground without excavating it. So it's not an extractive practice of removing soil to discover something under it, but it's more a gentle practice of the ground, the soil become basically the artifact, and it's not the dirt that you remove from it. Each number then is the magnetic value, which then get translated into a black and white image, and what you see here, what the archaeology calls anomalies, are in reality like different magnetic field of the soil, which then we translated into different type of soil around the ground, and then revealed this archaeological site, which is one of the biggest cities in the world, which is not recognized as a city. It's 6,000 years ago. It's not recognized as a city because it challenged the idea of the cities that we know of today, because it doesn't have a centralized power, but it's more an egalitarian type of city. And this was one of the algorithms that we used to speculate on how the city generate over time. And the last but not least is platform. We use this to basically collect and store information on a website so that everyone can access to it. And it becomes like an archive of memories that are specialized on a cartographic map. You will see this very well later with Gaza. Now we are in the second part, and again, apologies, I went very fast on the first section. Now we're going to speak about the work that I've been working on the past few years on Gaza, which we call the cartography of genocide. And as you can see, the previous example, we're looking at specific case or specific incident, which may have few incidents inside them, but they were restricted in time and space. The difficulty with Gaza is what's going on today. The scale of violence is much higher, but also the level of information is saturating us. Every day there are so many attacks, so much violence that it's hard to keep up. So we have to change the way we develop our work, the way we deal with the work, and this took us quite a long time. In the past 2 years, we produced different type of outcome, which some were like the case of the Hindraja, the car that you saw before is a specific investigation where we go in depth and we recreate the 3D model of the event. And then there is like a more overview of what's going on, which is the study of the military conduct, the Israeli military conduct in Gaza against civilians. We published these 4 reports in the past 2 years. The first one was in October 2024, and then we had 2 in April, which was about the ceasefire between January and March, and one about West Bank, which is because we noticed that some of the genocidal act in Gaza were spilling outside the West Bank. And then in August, 2 months ago, we just published the latest work, which was on the aid distribution system in Gaza. I will try to summarize part of them, and then we will focus towards the end of the presentation on the last report. When we publish this report, we also publish a platform. This is very important because this is where we basically archive all the material. This is available. All of you can access this and can review our work, can access to all the incidents that we geolocate, as I showed you in the first slide, and you can also access to the spatial layer. For example, in this case, it's showing the evacuation order in yellow. So you can see all the evacuation order from October 2023 until today, and you can see other special elements that can help to understand better what was going on in Gaza. Right now, we collected up to 3,000 events, which generally are attacks, that we geolocated, and our source are mainly OSINT material, which is open source material, which basically means images and video that you can find on socials, like any type of social, but also like charts like in Telegram, for example. So this is a material that is available to everyone. The difficulty is to collect the material and make sense of this material. Other type of source are public data sets, like the UN one, for example, and materials sent directly by Palestinians, so people that are in Gaza, and satellite images. We use this service, it's called Planet, which gives us like images every, I would say, 2-3 days of Gaza. It doesn't cover the whole Gaza, but it tends to cover part of Gaza, and you will see later. I think at the beginning here of this video, yeah, you can see this game mosaic of all the satellite images, which we are gonna make available this week for everyone, so everyone could have access to this and would be able to basically do research and look at these images. So after the first 12 months, we produced the first report was quite a big report, it was 800 pages of report, and the difference from the work that we were doing before is that we had 100,000 in this case of incident, and the genocidal act happened when we can see the connection between all of these incidents. It's not a singular act, and by putting together all of this material, some pattern emerged. And the pattern that we have observed concerning Israeli military contact in Gaza indicate a systematic and organized campaign to destroy life, conditions necessary for life, and life-sustaining infrastructure, like, for example, the destruction of all the hospitals in Gaza, or school and university, or the destruction of more than 90% of agriculture. I will go through 6 main areas of research. There is no time to dig into all of them. I will focus on the last one, which will be the one about targeting of aid, but they are all connected. Again, keep in mind that a genocide is the connection of multiple acts from a state. So spatial control is the area of research that deal with the physical reshaping of Gaza by strategic design of the Israeli army, and by, for example, destroying Gaza, but also constructing a new corridor or developing new aid routes that allow them to quickly enter and occupy Gaza to better control the population. This is an example of how we reconstruct a corridor. You will see this a bit later. This is the Mara corridor, which is in the south of Gaza, in Rafah. The Mara corridor was developed between April and May 2025, and that means basically cutting out all Rafah from Gaza, and then this is when the Israeli army destroyed completely the whole of Rafah. So from satellite images, you can start to see that in a few days, you can start to see this road. I will show you again later, but this road basically is how we identify a new corridor, and you can see that it's growing and growing, and this will grow until reaching the other side of Gaza. This is just one very simple example of how satellite images can allow you to see it from a different point of view. And then we geolocate footage on the ground, so we corroborate this image of the satellite with footage of the ground of the Israeli army destroying such area. Displacement is another quite big area of research, which deals with is the repeated and forced displacement of civilians, and is an assessment of the Israeli humanitarian measure, which is evacuation order are like a humanitarian tool, but there is nothing humanitarian what that Israel is doing. They weaponize this tool and they use evacuation order to constantly moving people, to bring them to exhaust people physically, because you are constantly moved, and when you move to a place you get attacked, or to exhaust you psychologically. And what you see on this map very briefly in yellow, these were the accumulation of order of evacuation only in the first year, which you can see covered the entire of Gaza, and the temporary humanitarian zone, this is where in blue, this is where the people were ordered to move towards. And even in this area, people were attacked and killed. This is available on the platform, and basically is a collection of all the order of evacuation orders. This is a very important one. This happened on the 13th of October 2023. This is when the Israeli army ordered Palestinians to move towards south, and basically the entire north was ordered to move towards south. And this has a historic meaning because they're telling people to move beyond the Wadi Gaza, which is a river, is this blue line. And this is what happened also during the Nakba, when people were moved towards south to get expelled to Egypt. And meanwhile, they were ordered to move towards south. The Israeli army did a strike campaign that killed people also in the south. So they were striking the south, meanwhile they ordered people to go there. This is a collection. This is basically, I'm running through the old data set. And this is when there was the ceasefire, so it kind of reset almost the map. But then you can quickly see how almost daily you have new evacuation orders, which between March and August were more than 60 orders. Another area of research is about the destruction of agriculture and water resources. So through satellite analysis we were able to identify how much agriculture was destroyed. And there is an intentionality in destroying it. It's not just the Israeli army moving through this area and so destroying part of it, but you can see on the bottom image the yellow line are us tracing manually where the Israeli army was moving, and it's clearly showing you that they're trying to destroy each corner, every meter by meter. It's an erasure of the agricultural land, but it's also an erasure of Palestinian identity. The fourth area of research is medical infrastructure, and the red area is basically the ground invasion of the Israeli army, and there is a direct connection when you look at the ground invasion and how hospitals get out of services. By October 2024, which was 1 year ago, 35 out of 36 hospitals were at least one time out of service. So this shows you that there is a pattern. This is not a singular case or 2-3 cases. This shows that this is happening on a larger scale. We also look at civilian infrastructure and the destruction of civilian infrastructure. This is a summary map, I would say, that shows basically virtually the whole Gaza is destroyed. What you see in blue is the damage or destroyed urban infrastructure. And what you see in white, it's not that the damage didn't happen, it's that there is no urban infrastructure there. And last but not least is the targeting of aid. This is a collection of incidents and attack directly on warehouses, restaurant, cafeteria, aid workers, civilians seeking aid that we analyze and geolocate. And you can see they're all spread around Gaza, and this is because what we call the civilian system for aid distribution, which is composed by UN, international organization, and a local collaborator to protect and distribute the food, was made of 400 sites along Gaza. So the system was embedded into society, and the Israeli military attacked this system from day one until today, and today we almost have the collapse of such system because they destroyed everything and they killed the people also that were functioning in this system, or they don't allow international organization to operate in Gaza. This is a timeline of the incident, and in this timeline there are some moments that are very important in terms of how many incidents were happening, but also the level of violence that was happening in a specific moment in time. At the beginning, they destroyed all the bakeries in North Gaza. Then when the food distribution moved to the shelter and the school, they started to attack the school. When they destroyed the school and some of the food was entering from outside, and so aid workers were very important to distribute the food, they started to attack directly the food. So you can start to see a correlation between time and space with these attacks. So this is a very basic timeline, I would say, where we see the two systems. One is the civilian system of aid distribution, which is the one that I was describing before, UN, international organization, and local collaborator, that was functioning in Gaza before October 2023, and has been constantly attacked, as we saw before. In the first year, already 322 attacks directly to the aid system. And then this year, from May 2025, we have the introduction of a new aid system, which we define a military system of aid distribution, and I will tell you why we call it military. This is what, I'm sure you heard about that, is operated by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and is happening in May 2025. This is a map that tries to oversimplify the system, but basically we have these two systems in place. The civilian system today, because most of the 400 sites have been destroyed, rely on these two roads. This is Al-Rashid Road in the north. This black line is just the first kilometer, and in the south we have Saladin Road. Again, this black line is the first few kilometers. And this basically road are the two arteries of Gaza, and they bring food inside of Gaza where the warehouses are, the one that remain, of course. So because we saw that they've been attacking the system from the beginning, there is no protection anymore, and we have a lot of violence and looting along this first kilometer. The red dots are incidents that we geolocated, which indicate violence. And you can see how now the dots are more concentrated around these two black squares and around the two blue squares. The blue squares are where the military system of aid distribution is. These are where only 4 sides, so remember 400 versus 4 sides of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation are. We have 3 in Rafah and 1 in central Gaza. Again, this is show us how the attacks against infrastructure has been continued. These are just some of the incidents between March and August 2025, and we have the continuous attack on bakeries, restaurants, cafes, warehouses, and you can see they're concentrated in 2 main areas. This is Gaza City, and then we have Deir al-Balah. And these are 2 important places because Gaza City, if you destroy the place where food can be produced or distributed, you basically are forcing Palestinians to leave that area. So you're trying to cutting them out of the aid system. These are some examples of some of the incidents that we geolocate. I will not go into detail into these, but just to ground down the map that you saw before. Again, this reiterate that the attack on civilians are basically positioned along this path where the UN truck enters, and this is where civilians are accumulating because they're desperate, they wait for food, and this is where they're shot by Israeli army. This is also where looting are happening from gangs that are supported by the Israeli army, which we have proved that because they operate inside an area that is only accessible to Israeli army, but also looted by civilians because their desperation brings them to the point to do this because they don't have any other alternative. The other alternative is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and you will see why this is not feasible. But all of this doesn't happen in one day. We often speak about destruction in Gaza. I think before we mentioned reconstruction, which I think is a very important element. There is violence in the construction that is happening right now in Gaza, and there will be violence in the reconstruction that is being planned so far. Unfortunately, this video doesn't work, which is a shame because it's a quite critical video. But basically what it was showing is, you have to imagine on this map, you have to imagine like a lot of red lines are entering Gaza, especially from the east side. So imagine from this east side of Gaza, you start to see a lot of red lines entering in and start to creating a net, like a network. And this network is the construction of new roads by the Israeli army, is the construction of corridors like the Nazarene corridor, which is the one that was dividing, that is dividing Gaza from north to south, the corridor in Morag that we saw before, that is dividing Rafah from all of Gaza, and other corridor like the Maginons that is splitting communities. So you have to start imagining this network that is growing inside of Gaza, and this is the network of the Israeli army, it's the military network that has been built. The images that you see on the right is on the top, is an example of an initial military station. So these are some of the trucks and military trucks and tanks that are expanding. So they build this inside of Gaza, and then they build another one, and then another one. So they kind of occupy Gaza. The second image is a different infrastructure, and this was the point of this map. The point I wanted to show you how the aid distribution of today, the Gaza humanitarian distribution system, is embedded inside the military infrastructure. It's an extension of the military infrastructure. And this is one example. This is one of the 4 sites that we have in Gaza. And what you see here, this darker area are people. These are people looking for food. The third image is just a zoom out. And you can imagine, this is like a zoom out of this infrastructure. The brighter lines that you see here are the roads that's been appropriated or built by the Israeli army. So there is not only destruction in Gaza. So if we move south in Rafah, this is what I wanted to show you before, but you will only see a portion of it in the south. The red lines here are basically us tracking manually every satellite image to see the presence of military tanks. And you can see that through the time these occupations start to grow. This is between April and May, and the destruction that is happening here and very soon here is basically anticipating the construction of the Morag corridor. So they destroy this area and then they construct the Morag corridor that will split this region. So there is destruction and construction happening at the same time. And inside this system, here in this region is where 3 out of 4 Gaza Humanitarian Foundation are positioned. So you can clearly see the correlation between the Israeli army and the aid system. It's very important to understand where they are. So these are the 4 aid distribution centers from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation inside the 4 blue squares. And you can see that 3 are in Rafah. This is very important, still in the south. This is because they want to attract and push the population towards the south. It's not accidental, there is a design, there is a plan behind that. And then we have one close to the Nazarene corridor. Even if this is an oversimplified image, you can clearly see that one is connected to the Nazarene corridor and 3 are connected to the Morag and Philadelphia corridor. This is where the Israeli army is positioned. They all are inside this red area. The red area is a military zone. It's a no-go zone for the Palestinians. If you enter this area, you're going to be killed. So it's quite interesting to see that all the 4 sides are inside a military zone. And this is where we see most of the violence. Another important point, most of the civilians are pushed in this region, again the Mawazi region. And you can clearly see that to reach this site, you have to work between 2.5 and 10 kilometers. You have to imagine you have to work on sand, very hot condition, and this leads to taking a lot of time. And people are also in very inhuman condition where they can't afford to do this, so only the strongest can do this. We collected more than 160 announcements of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which tell us the opening and closure of each site, and we start to analyze them. And what we notice is that on average, a site is only open for 23 minutes. But after the 19th of June, a site is open only for, on average, like 10 minutes. So what I'm zooming here is the green bar is the actual opening of the site, which is on average 10 minutes. So you have to imagine people has only 10 minutes to get the food. And then what is very important here is this yellow bar. This yellow bar showing the time between the announcement of the opening, so when we say a site is open, and the actual opening. This is crucial because this time, after the 19th of June, reduce and shrink down to just 70 minutes. This means that Palestinians don't have enough time to reach these sites, as we saw before, because they have to work for hours. This creates a condition where Palestinians have to move closer to these sites and put themselves in danger because these sites are inside a military zone. This is a clear example. The blue one are the aid distribution center. The red one is the military infrastructure. Again, you can see the connection. They are surrounded by military infrastructure. And this light blue line is the civilian path that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation established. So on this path, civilians should be safe. And this is where most of the violence that we see today happen. In the white square, you can see this dark area, which is basically hundreds of people that are waiting and they're repairing themselves from the shooting of 2 tanks. In the red square, you can see 2 military tanks that we identified from a satellite image. And we also have footage from the ground showing this moment. You can see like the shooting hitting the sand, you can see people like lying on the ground. Some were killed, some were injured. And this is a way to ground the images that we see and to corroborate with satellite images. We don't see this trace the day after. This is clearly people that are accumulating in this area. We have other people here, which is a bit hard to see from this image right now, which are waiting the moment to enter. So you can see the architecture, the mechanism behind the system. And again, this is another, I will start to speed up a little bit. You can see again here like the civilian path in light blue or aqua. And on this path, the red dots are all the geolocated incidents that we analyzed, and most of them happen on these paths. This is where the violence is happening. This is when the Palestinians are waiting for food. This is where they're killed, basically. This is the latest advancement. They may replace 2 of them to 2 new builds. We are monitoring satellite images. There may be a slightly different type of sites for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which look from satellite images much more surveillance from the type of infrastructure they're putting in place, but it's too early to say. And it's very important to look to think about the aid distribution and the system that is put in place today, with also the destruction of agriculture, because agriculture is one of the ways of Palestinians for self-sustaining themselves, to grow their food. And it's not accidental that the population is being pushed towards the west side, which is the side with less agricultural land. In particular, the Mawazi is the least arable area of Gaza, and it's not an accident that they destroyed more than 90% of this land because they don't want to give access to the Palestinians. These are all the evacuation order between March and August 2025, so the most recent one. And these are arrows that we didn't do. These are arrows that come from the Israeli army, and we just retraced them. And you can see that they all point towards the west and down to the south. So they all point here. The Rafah push up in the Mawazi. So they all point in this area where people cannot access to agricultural land, and the only way to get food is only the food that enter Gaza. And right now, the way the food enters in Gaza is through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is in the south. So you can see how everything is connected, and so the Israeli army is creating a dependency on them, on how basically they are controlling the food. They don't control only the body in space by constantly moving the population, but they control the population at the biological level where they rationalize how much food they can access to. This is the last slide. This image is just showing through time the area that has been destroyed by the Israeli army, completely destroyed. There were an ethnic cleansing is happening before in the north, then moved to Rafah, Netzarim, North Gaza, Rafah, Khan Yunis, and now we're back to Gaza City, which is one of the least piece of this puzzle, and you can see how they're completely destroyed the entire Gaza. I will just conclude by saying 2 lines. So the current siege of the Gaza City, with its forced displacement, bombing, and famine, continues a documented pattern of Israeli military strategy. This strategy involved a repeated cycle of destruction and construction, as seen with the Netzarim corridor in northern Gaza, Rafah, and Khan Yunis. Genocide is a process consisting of many interrelated events, not a single act. Part of the evidence of genocide is therefore in the overlapping and the cumulative action of the state. The events we have analyzed are not accidental. They are part of a planned and calculated campaign to destroy Palestinian life and the conditions necessary to sustain it. This is achieved by destroying hospitals, shelters, schools, collapsing the humanitarian aid system, and demolishing virtually all agricultural land and urban areas. However, destruction is not only part of this campaign. Over the past 2 years, a process of violent construction has also occurred, with the military infrastructure being built through Gaza to fragment and further control it and its population. Today, we may have finally reached a ceasefire. This is an incredible news, and there is a glimpse of hope for the Palestinian people. However, the ceasefire is not enough. If the system built by Israel remains in place, our previous report showed that civilians continue to be killed in the vicinity of military zone during the post-ceasefire. A ceasefire alone will not prevent such killing if civilians are still forced to travel towards militarized DHF distribution stations through corridor and system of control, and if the reconstruction of Gaza is not led by Palestinians themselves. Thank you.